your professor for HISD 140. And so I have a short, brief video where I'm going to go over the final essay exam with you. You guys have already had some experience with my grading style and what I want from you in the midterm essay, but I want to go through this with you as well. I'm also going to ask one of my former students, by the way, to send me a copy of her exam from last semester, which was very good, to give you another example as well before the finals due. But I want to go through this and go through the assignment as it's posted on the module in the course, and go through each step and talk about, if you're having troubles, if you had troubles last time, you want some tips on how to better go about doing this, I'll give them to you a little bit in this video. So let's take a look at this final essay. It starts out with a little sort of paragraph that says, from the beginning of the 19th century, the United States of America grew rapidly from a seemingly fragile, revolutionary experiment in self-government to a budding industrial and economic power. But by the middle of the century, it nearly destroyed itself in the fires of civil war. And I give the assignment. So your assignment for this is to write a slightly longer essay, 5 to 7 pages, which says to craft a narrative of how the bold American experiment in Republican government was nearly destroyed by the Civil War. That's the general topic. The essay must be an answer to this question, this following question. In what ways was the Civil War at heart a conflict about American national identity? Should have heard something similar to that already if you did the midterm. Yes, it's a very similar question. And it lays out more specifically, by the way, okay, in terms of this, you should answer, in answering that question, you should discuss at least these 3 things in some detail. 1, what the identity of the United States was. What was its national identity according to its citizens at the time of the Civil War? And again, so it's the same thing as the last essay, right? And I'll come back in a second, but I want you doing, I'm going to see in a moment, I want you to build on what you did in the midterm. Secondly, second thing you should have in your essay, how national identity became an issue leading up to the Civil War. And by that I mean, remember the last time I made a big deal in a lot of your papers about you're just throwing events in there and not processes? Well, for the most part, I mean events. Okay, what key events, personalities were involved that made it an issue in which people were killing each other by 1861. And again, that you can also list processes if you want to keep that distinction in mind. We're talking about a shorter period of time as well, although it's 60 years, or was it 40 years, right? 1820 basically. You can get away with that if you want to talk about a process. Although everything I think that's already going to start the Civil War is almost already there in terms of processes by the 1860s. But if you want to do that, you can do that as well. And then finally, and this is a little more, if I look like I'm torturing words, there's a reason for it, but let me explain. The last thing you need is to list, and it needs to be clearly expressed, all 3 of these things in your essay. What were the primary causes that made American national identity a matter of conflict? Why was national identity so important to that conflict? And there are a variety of things. I'm sure you can guess some of the more important ones, I think. But again, this is not about I think. This is about what you think. And I have in bold letter on the bottom of this part, the assignment part of the essay, it says your final essay should build on your midterm essay in some manner and develop it, in other words. And again, I'm not asking you, by the way, to, well, first of all, you shouldn't just put your midterm in and just rewrite it slightly and turn it in. You'll get a bad grade. But you might take, again, the whole definition of national identity. If you don't think it changed that much, use that from the first essay. Some of you did a very good job stating what you thought that was. Others of you can, take some of the sources you use for the first paper. Ransack your own work is the point of this. This is something, by the way, academic historians, popular historians do all the time. You've already done that work. You can still use it. It's still usable for what you're going to do for this essay. So that's part of one of the reasons I want you to do this, but also I want you to see the connection between the two, because you have longer term building up to the revolution, the creation of the republic. But now, of course, you have all those things baked in that, you can see, okay, did some of those things cause, the events that led to the Civil War, right? And going back to those issues of identity, which you mentioned last time, Joyce Appleby's secondary source, obviously, for you. But also you've got in the primary sources, and for obvious reasons, the differences between North and South in what they viewed the country to be. Different versions of a Republican ideal of government from the different sections of the country. And even not just North and South, by the way, you could say East and West, if you're going to throw in Andrew Jackson and Jacksonian, populism. Populism's all the rage these days, so why not? There's a Western-Eastern thing going on, which is kind of involved even in the Civil War. You're building up to the Civil War. Lincoln's from the Midwest, and so there's a Midwest-East, South-Southern thing as well. The South feels encircled, it's not necessarily totally crazy to think that if you're South in the 1861. So my point is, you have all those factors you can look at, and I'll go through this in a second. By the way, if you want to go, and I'm going for the directions here real quick, I'm going to talk about how you want to, prepare or do this, give you some pointers here. But in terms of directions, again, same thing as the first essay. I want you to cite, either your textbook or sources from major problems. And for this one, I think it was 2. For the last one, I think it's a minimum of 3. 6, minimum of 6, 6 sources for the final essay. 3 from the first half of the semester, 3 from the second. And again, if you want to, use the sources you picked up in the first part of the in the midterm. Again, ransack your midterm. Go back. And then, by the way, that may be painful for some of you. It's hard to do that. And you read something you read, I don't like it. That's part of that one thing I want you to do is, okay, I can look objectively at what you just did and see if you can use it. If you can't, just leave it. But the point is to get you to do that. And it can actually help you make things a little easier on you. That's part of the point of that as well. And of course, and again, this part of the point of this, by the way, having 3 sources from first half of the semester, second half, it means this essay should be cumulative. It should cover as much as possible the sort of broad spectrum of the course. Feel free to ransack anything going back to the beginning of the course. I guess you could get to the Ice Age or something like that. I don't know. Maybe you want to talk about the Native Americans. They do, by the way, have something to do with the Civil Wars. There's a connection between, as you're going to see in the chapter for this week, a connection between the Civil Wars and the Indian Wars. But still, any sort of connections you can make, you should be talking about the history of the Republic in a larger perspective. Secondly, same parameters in terms of format. Typed 12-point Times New Roman font, title, name of the one quarter upper paper, double spaced. Actually doesn't say that. I'll change that. It's double spaced. Don't provide a bibliography. Again, all you're doing is providing me citations from the textbook and citations from major problems, the sources from there. And again, you have what you had last time in terms of in-text citation. Most of you guys did a good job of that last time. And then finally, again, in terms of directions, you should have an introduction, body, conclusion. And somewhere in your paper, you must clearly state your thesis, and a sentence or 2, answering that question. Basically, something like, the U.S. Civil War, bloodiest conflict in American history, was at heart a conflict about national identity because. It doesn't have to be that pat or that rote, but it can be something like that. It should express that. If you want to be creative, go ahead, as long as it does the job, okay? And again, some of the objectives here, again, the objectives, this is this other part of this assignment sheet, to get you to connect what you had done in the earlier essay with this one. Again, partly to get you to make larger historical connections over time, to get you to see the process of how the Republic is formed out of the colonial period, from the belief systems of a European, whatever, British ideals and religious heritage, how that gets transformed, but is still connected and still has an influence into the early Republic. but also to get you to utilize the sources and interpretations in your earlier essay. Again, to connect your own thinking, right? To give yourself to think, okay, what did I think about this? Okay, what did I think? Okay, this will help you think in the now. It's a hard thing to do, actually. What did I say 3 weeks ago? Do I care? Does it matter? No. And you don't necessarily have to be consistent, by the way. You may have changed your mind in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever since the midterm. But to get you to recognize, make a point of, okay, trying to connect what you're doing now to what you did then. Sounds banal and silly. It's not. It's actually hard to do if you're doing something, fairly complicated like an academic style essay. Second objective, again, is to get you to utilize the sources and use them to answer that question, and to utilize them to interpret those sources as part of your essay. Again, to get you to choose, to think for yourself, okay, what causes were important and why. Maybe there's only one cause. I doubt it, but there's probably, you could say, hey, it's all slavery, or it's all, money, the economy, South, North, we're, fighting for predominance, whatever, something like that. Get you to choose, okay, which events were really important. Not everybody agree, not all historians agree about what exactly, which different set of events was, in terms of cause, all those sorts of things, right? Another objective is to, again, get you to relay your findings, thesis, evidence for it, your interpretations in a clear, intelligible manner. And then finally, again, to assess your state of your knowledge of American history over the time period covered by the course. So again, in terms of sources, it should be cumulative. And by the way, if you're going to talk about something, by the way, like slavery, go back into the early period. Hey, this is back from the time of the 15th century. This is an old thing. It precedes the country itself, precedes the republic itself. Show me that you know that. And guys, think in those terms, if you would. And then finally, the grading rubric is the exact same as on the first one. Graded on directions, following directions / the format. Is it properly formatted? Is it the right length? And by the way, right length, if you double space your name and all that stuff, and double space your title, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna deduct points for that. Like, just give me 4 or 5 full pages, double space. You can do it. It's not that hard. Does it have an intro, body, conclusion? Knowledge. Does the paper demonstrate a working knowledge of the sources chosen, other sources it makes reference to? Does it demonstrate a knowledge of the history of the period in question, as detailed in the readings? Comprehension. Does the paper, and that's 15 points, by the way, for the format. Directions, 35 for knowledge, 35 points for comprehension. Does the paper demonstrate an accurate understanding of the source, of the sources and its their basic ideas and themes? Does it demonstrate an attempt to analyze the sources in terms of theme or idea or historical development? In other words, do you utilize the sources in a proper manner? And then finally, composition. Is the paper written clearly? Does it have a precise claim, a precise thesis? Is it proofread properly? Is it free from major typographical errors? You guys didn't, for the most part, have any problem with grammar last time, and I didn't see for the most part. Some of you, again, if it becomes distracting, if it looks bad, I will alert that to you, take a few points off, because you need to proofread as a matter of habit, but most of you are okay with that, for a total of 100 points. And again, this is a major component. It's 35% of your grade, so take care with each aspect of this. And so those are the basics of the essay. Now, to come back to the content of it, and I won't help you with the writing part. You can go to the writing center or get help yourselves with this. But if you're starting out, again, I mentioned go back to your midterm essay, first of all. Give me a few pointers, at least 4 or 5 tips. First one's go back to your midterm, see what you thought. What was identity by 1820? Because honestly, pretty much everything you could say, if you think something's fundamentally changed, say so. But go back and look at what you said in the midterm essay. Look at your sources. Look at your interpretation. And you've been reading about the intervening period since then. Got some background. You're going to get this coming week some more stuff on the war itself. Might wait until after that to get a good view of it. There's some good. You got watching the good clip from a very good documentary on this. Look at those things, and then go over. And there's another thing about sources. go over your response questions. And again, a lot of you have been, okay, well, how do I know I'm doing these right? Well, you know you're doing them right if they're useful to you when you go to write your essay. And again, you should have been probably looking at the final essay. That's what you're taking the notes for. These are notes on sources, things you might need to know later on. So on any source, and maybe, again, I expect you to choose what sources you choose to write on each week. Think about identity. Both essay topics are about identity. Okay, go back and look. Okay, what did I have in the notes? What did I get? Is there anything in? Again, it'll save you a little bit of time going back. Okay, well, what sources? Which one should I choose? And also give you an idea. Okay, well, I took notes, but this one's not useful. I don't have to. At least it's going to help you ease that process of research. Which again, it's not strenuous research. It's all in the book you have. But still, these are things you use no matter what type of history you're doing, basically. But go back to all the things you've done, all the notes you've taken, the responses, the midterm. And then I would start out by making a brief outline of what you're going to do. And by brief, I don't like long outlines myself. Until I got into grad school, I didn't really use outlines at all, which was lazy, and I got by with it. Again, some people, they can't do it, don't do it. Do what works for you. But if I were going to do this and you're having trouble getting started, I would, make it first thing, outline. I would give the answers in the outline form to those 3 questions you give you in the first part, right? What was that identity by the start of the Civil War? What was American national identity for most Americans by the start of the Civil War? And write the question and the answer out to it. And then go through each of those other 3, how it became an issue leading up to the Civil War, answer that question you're going to give. Third thing, what were the causes that made American national identity a matter of conflict going into the war? Question and then the answer. So you know exactly what you're going to put into the essay. Even because, again, you're going to go through it and you're going to get, 3 or 4 pages written. It's like, again, this happens when you write. You get so bogged down in details, you forget the original purpose, the original thesis, the original point you originally had. So it's good to have those things laid out like that. And the second part, outline form, you would sort of, okay, how do you want your argument to go? Again, and this doesn't have to be long. You can just give you like a couple of points. First, I'm going to talk about identity, what it was, there's a source for it. You can do that. Then I'm going to talk about, okay, which events led up to that. These are the events, this is the source for it. What were the causes? Okay, what were these with causes? You can get more detailed as you go along and do this. And by the way, you should always revise your papers at least once. Another thing, revision is how most writing gets done well. I guess there are people in the world who are Mozarts. If you know anything about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, never wrote second drafts, ever. Then again, he was composing by the time he was 2 years old, and he had the ultimate helicopter dad in Leopold Mozart, who was, by the way, also himself an accomplished composer and musician. But guess what? You're not Mozart. So I would, write a dirty outline, a general, a very quick and dirty outline like that. Go through those, and also, by the way, I mentioned those 3 bullet points. Besides that, in terms of just one sentence summary of what your introduction is going to be. And some of you, by the way, your introductions weren't more than a sentence anyway. So what? Just a little preview of it, and a few words of what your conclusion is going to be in addition to those things I just mentioned. And then go from there. And then as you go along, as you think, and you should be thinking about, again, what do you think about this? But maybe, okay, I go through this, but it doesn't quite work. Think about what you're saying, your argument, as you go through it. It'll change. Outlines always do. I've never started a writing project, where it was exactly the same as when I finished it. There were changes you make as you go on. It's natural. That's okay. You have to make changes, but the point is that outline gives you some idea of where you're going, and therefore some control over the process, which, again, I understand. Writing can suck. Writing can feel like, oh, what am I supposed to do? And that's just the writer's block. Everybody goes through it. So that would be the way I would go about doing it. And again, the point of all that, although it sounds like a little extra work, is to get you to think about it consciously and do the thing intentionally, and not just write something off the top of your head the night before it's turned in. You will not get a pass. I can guarantee you, you won't get the grade you want. Take a little extra time and effort. Start now. Look, I understand for some of you this is hard to do. It's hard to push yourself through something you're not that interested in. That's why you do a little bit at a time, so you don't have to do it all at once. And the closer you get down to the finish line, the easier it becomes. So get started now. Take you a little bit of time to do this. And that's about all I have in terms of this video. One last thing for you, I'll send an email out in a few minutes. So you were asking what your grade was right now. I have posted what I'm calling a post-midterm grade. That is your grade up through week 12, up through about the 3/4 way of the course. In the grade book. It's right next to the midterm grade. Go see what it is and take a look at it. And that is it. I'll see you guys next week. Take care.